Hello, everybody. So great to have you here. And we've got a special guest today, Crockett Dale. Welcome, Crockett.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for letting me be here.
So today we're going to be talking about this idea of taking a Da Vinci approach to change and why it's so beneficial to really think about taking an interdisciplinary approach in order to improve the health and well-being for as many people as we possibly can, and particularly leveraging every workplace to promote better health and well-being. So Crockett, you have been in this space for a long time. You were CEO of Healthstat, one of the leading on-site clinic providers, meaning that this was a company that set up clinics for companies on their campus. So it's really easy access for their employees to be able to go to a clinic. And now you are with Everside, also an on-site clinic provider, and you are their VP of Strategic Relations. I can't imagine somebody better than you to do that. And then perhaps what you are most well known for, and personally what I'm most excited about, you are my best friend at work, Crockett Dale.
Yes, and you are mine. And so how did that come about?
How did that come about? Can you share with us really quickly? And before you do that, though, I would love for our audience members to share where they're coming from. I'm in San Francisco. Crockett Dale, tell us where you are.
I'm in Hickory, North Carolina.
Okay. And we got a comment here already from Christopher Louis. Crockett is the best in the biz. That is awesome. And I think that's true. Well, so Crockett, let's just start right now with sharing a little bit about how did we meet in the first place? Walk us through that.
I had the privilege of working with a behavioral science company whose CEO thought that I should engage Laura's workshop for our managers to go advance well-being in our culture. And so I took the blind faith and said, okay, let's hire Laura. And she came in and provided a workshop for 40 managers for 8 hours. And I knew right then there was something about this individual that was powerful in her message and that I needed to be associated with. So I was fortunate to continue to work with Laura to go develop programs. And we developed a certain level of trust, and we were willing to challenge each other and to be honest. And so it's been so meaningful to me personally to endeavor to try to make changes in people's lives, which we all know that's not easy to change. But when you have a best friend like Laura, that journey is so much more enjoyable to go have somebody that you could co-develop things with, or when you think you're going down a road and it may look like there's just too many barriers or it's just too hard to go accomplish something, you could reach out to that individual that allows access to say, maybe you need to think about it in this way. So if you've ever heard of Gallup and their surveys, I think they have something called Q12, and Q10 says, do you have a best friend at work? And so it wasn't just organically that Laura and I developed that relationship quickly. We began to learn that we needed it, and then we supported it. So we have each other's best interest at heart, and I am so thankful for that relationship.
So Crockett, when you have not just a good friend at work, but a best friend at work like we have, although at work now is virtual for us and for many, of course, but when you have a best friend at work, you are 7 times more likely to be highly engaged in your work. So a message that I often share with managers and leaders is you really need to foster friendship in the workplace, whether it's virtual or in person, because if you do, this is really the key to having a high-performing team and a high-performing organization. All right, so we've got a number of people coming in here. We've got Anne-Marie coming in from Columbia, Canada, and she is skiing right now. I love that. We got Stephanie coming from Atlanta, Georgia. We have my mom coming in from Bend, Oregon. It looks like she says that she can't hear. Okay, so AJ, we might want to address that. Somebody coming in from Wisconsin, and we also have we got John Dawson. Hello, John, coming in from Huntersville, North Carolina, and then Lisa Blair coming in from Vermont. So we've got a a good group of people coming in here today. All right, so what we're going to be talking about today is really about this collaborative initiative that we launched, a manager-driven movement of well-being, specifically really leveraging those managers to encourage people to not only engage with their health and well-being, but to take advantage of the on-site clinic, because I think we've all learned the hard way, Crockett, have we not, that if you build it as in a workplace wellness program or an on-site clinic, they will not necessarily come. So let's start here in talking about this initiative. Can you just share very quickly, what was this initiative that we co-launched?
The initiative, if you had to put a header on it, was about engagement, and engagement with coupled possibly with enlightenment. So to your point, if you build it, will they come? Many associates that work in these environments that have access to better primary care with Everside's model, formerly Healthstat, didn't even know they had a clinic. But the ones that didn't necessarily know how to engage it. And so they didn't know. I think that we were providing two different messages, even within Healthstat, to say, do I do what I need to do to be incrementally productive, or do I take my own wellness in my own hands and advance that initiative? And so that was the initiative, to go learn from what Healthstat did, the former company that I worked for, I was the CEO of, to go say, how do you take Laura's initiative and find out what works best about it to optimize individuals' well-being, and then supplant that to other companies that we thought it really worked for us.
So the idea here was really to tap into the power of the manager to really increase engagement, not only with the on-site clinic that these employees had access to, but also to really encourage employees, every employee across the organization of Healthstat, as well as the clients that you serve, to engage with their well-being. And we know, because of longstanding Gallup research and even our own research that's been published, that the manager is uniquely positioned within the workplace to either encourage or discourage their team members from engaging with their health and well-being. Crockett, I love that story about the manager. This was one of your manufacturing companies that you were working with, and they had multiple on-site clinics at their different sites. All of them were doing really well except one. Tell us that story.
Well, you always want me to land my plane and to be brief, and that's always been a challenge. But when you do this for 20 years and you see this across the country with these worksite clinics, you see many things that work and some that don't work. And so it provides opportunities to go figure out, how do you do that better? And to Laura's point, we had a large manufacturer that had several sites that had our providers, and they had low engagement by their own numbers at one site, and they were curious how that happened. So they physically went to see the site, and the manager at that site got caught saying, well, if you want to see that nurse practitioner, you can, but you better get back to work. And so the people were following the manager. They thought that, given that they had a clinic and they had someone that's holistic that was trying to engage them and enlighten them and support them with their health and well-being, their manager was giving them a strong message to say, you need to be productive. And I just don't think that's a great idea. And so the senior management had a discussion with that manager, and all of a sudden engagement increased.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, I think so often in a lot of these workplace wellness initiatives, as well as having these on-site clinics, there are these mixed signals. So on the one hand, that the workplace wellness program is saying, you know, turn off your devices at night, for example, or health and well-being is really important. You need to prioritize it. And then a lot of times these employees are getting exactly the opposite message from their manager. Like, their manager is sending them late night emails. And so people feel like they need to respond to that. Or their manager, case in point with the story that you just shared, they're referring to the nurse practitioners as quactitioners. So it's no wonder that people weren't showing up. So this really goes to show the critical role, not only that managers play, but to your point, that senior leaders play to really get people to engage with those wellness initiatives. So I want to pause really quickly and ask our audience members, for those of you who are engaged with workplace wellness programs, are you seeing those disconnects as well, where your wellness program is saying one thing, and then the message, the wider company message, often shared by leaders and managers, seems to be saying exactly the opposite. So often there's a disconnect between the two. So Crockett, while we're getting those responses from people, and I'm so happy to see that Michael Verdeen here, coming from Portland, Oregon, is here. Share with us a little bit about this story about the key role that senior leaders like yourself play in these manager-driven movements.
Well, if you think about that, the managers, to your point, have so much influence over what we do in our work environment. And for me, work is no more than high school. It's just we're just making stuff as opposed to going to class. So you've got all these different mores and ideas and people playing, and they learn how to work together. But the managers really dictate the structure like a teacher does or a principal. But the thing I would say is the role they play is that if you think about a high school environment, what the principal wants to accomplish, if the teachers are not aligned with the senior management, then you may have mixed messages all the way down. So the CEO or the leader of a union group or whoever the leader is, the manager, because we're all managers of something, our own lives or our families or companies, then the message may not translate down and get distilled. And so they may be getting mixed messages, to your point. An example of that would be to say, of course, we want you to be healthy and well, but you see the senior managers take the elevator, not the stairs, or they park closer, or they have fast food vending machines in their office, but they're saying, we want you to engage wellness and well-being, but they're not creating environments to support that. And they may also be eating bad food at work and not leading by example. So the individuals watch what you do, and then they try to mimic that behavior because they think that's what my manager thinks is okay. So they're going to follow
Absolutely right.
what they do.
Managers are kind of those key permission givers within the workplace. And senior leaders, I call them the trendsetters. They kind of set the tone across the organization. But we need to remember that those managers are also looking to their manager to make sure that it's okay for them to be supporting and really prioritizing well-being within the context of their team. So we were conducting this Managers on the Move workshop, and this was one of several that we conducted at Healthstat. And I remember very, very vividly, there was this moment when the managers were like, are you sure that senior management here really supports us doing this? And so then what happened at that moment, Crockett?
I got up and I could sense the same as you did during the workshop that they said, this all sounds good, but do you really mean it? And so tangibly, I signed something on a wall that said, this is the Declaration of Wellness Independence. And I said, I put my name to it, and it was cathartic and emotional because I thought I was trying to create these programs and working tirelessly to serve our clients and doing a great job with that. But much like the cobbler's children have no shoes, I wasn't supporting that necessarily myself. And they need to hear directly from me that I believed it and that I was willing to put my name behind it.
Absolutely. So we've got some thoughts coming in here. Lisa Blair says, I'm in a school environment, so we all have access to the same wellness programs, but I think it's handled differently building to building. So Crockett, do you want to talk to that really quickly?
Yes, my experience has been that you could see a wellness initiative that may take off and grow within a department or a building, and then that doesn't necessarily have the same acceptance or merits or growth in another department or another building. And so that's the goal, I think, of the endeavor, is to say, okay, well, that's human nature. I call it tribalism or Maslow, but because you're always trying to figure out what my building's doing, what my unit's doing. But there's an opportunity to learn from each other's building to say what was successful and can we replicate that?
Absolutely. And this is something I think that we saw at Healthstat as well. We had some people like Travis. I know he really embraced this idea of, for example, he started leading stretches with his team, right? And he sent this awesome, I got this awesome picture from one of his team members showing them all stretching together. So it really kind of happens team by team. Some of these managers are going to embrace it more than others. Some of the building managers, as Lisa is talking about here, or principals or department heads, are going to embrace it more than others. But the key point that you brought up here, Crockett, is the idea that they are actually looking at one another. And there does tend to be kind of a mimicking across teams. I want to just also share here Sally Scoville. Sally, great to see you. She shared, yes, do more with less, support students without offering any support for employees. We got a free meal in the student dining hall as a thank you. So I guess meaning that there's some discrepancies between, what are offered to some groups as opposed to others. So let's talk a little bit more about, again, the key role that managers play, and what was the difference that we saw in Healthstat, kind of a before and after, as a result of this manager-driven movement?
I think for me that after your workshop, the managers were empowered to grow wellness initiatives. They had aspects that you've taught me that people need, called self-determination, competency, autonomy. So they were taking off, and some groups like to have walking meetings. Some groups like to have challenges. But they all had their own culture, if you will, but they were allowed to go back and discover that in their own way. And they did that, and they had the support to do that. And so that happened immediately. And as you well know, our HR director said it advanced Healthstat's culture in a positive way by 2 years. The light bulb that went off for me, that when we were promoting health and well-being with these great practitioners and these programs and data and science with rigor, it was so intertwined with culture that we may have missed that point. And so I figured out, I think, that culture is more important than the strategy. And so
Absolutely. I mean, we all know the famous Peter Drucker quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have a culture that supports that, then it's unlikely to succeed. So so often I see these wellness strategies that are undermined by a negative culture where you have a disconnect between the two. But there's also the piece that you brought up about the power of the manager. And there's actually a 19-country study that was conducted by ADP Research Institute, in which they found that the culture that employees experience when they are at work is largely the culture they experience within the context of their team. So this is something that Healthstat, I think, really got to experience, is a manager-driven movement really perhaps is a shortcut to really changing the culture in a positive way. And I want to just pause here really quickly. First of all, Lisa said, thank you. We have a wonderful person here who's listening in. Another one of my best friends at work, Julie Shipley. And Julie, I'm so grateful to you still. Julie actually was with Schindler Elevator Corporation, and she is really the genesis behind Managers on the Move. So she was part of the organizational development team there, and she had this brilliant idea of incorporating well-being into a high potential training, a training for high potential managers. They had this annual getaway, and at the time this was actually a 2-day workshop. And so thanks to Julie, I came in, the two of us worked together tirelessly to create this amazing workshop, which I think was one of the most profoundly effective workshops they ever had. So Julie says, making wellness leader-led also allows for more personalization. I couldn't agree more. And flexibility to do what works for your team, and for individual employees to do what works for them. Absolutely. And Julie, Mike Yurchuk, now Senior VP of HR, at the time when we were working together, he said to me this idea that he talks to managers about, the idea of just simply starting to pay attention to the people on your team and noticing if there's anybody who's feeling left out. So Crockett, what are some thoughts that you have around that, around this personalization piece, that when managers really start to understand, that well-being matters and that they matter in that equation, what happens? What's the magic that can happen?
Well, I think that you have a higher level of your organization for retention. I think your employees are more productive. I think that you become a better steward of the resources you have in your community. So, when we say the power of the manager, and I totally support that as a place to start, but I remember in the workshop that you provided this little template for us. Do you remember this?
Oh, and Julie, you're going to remember this too. Okay, go for it.
And it showed pictures of things that Laura brought up. And so my memory was, because I'm, not good at technology or reading, but the pictures work. So it helped Laura, I think, take an individual and say, where are you today? Where do you want to be? Where is your team today? Where do you want your team to be? Where is your company today? And where would you like your company to be? I bring that up because you said, what did it do? It created opportunities for dialogues about things that people in the past were not necessarily willing to talk about. It seems like that the culture may have been in the past to say, if someone had a problem, well, you just go figure that out and tough it up or go to an EAP program. But if you're willing to be open, to have open dialogues, then you embrace your associates and your teammates, and you can do so much more to treat them as humans, not just workers.
Yeah, I love the expression, the idea of let's appreciate people, not just for what they do, but for who they are as human beings. And I couldn't agree with you more about that, just peer to peer or teammate to manager, human conversations. That's what really matters the most if we want to tackle this mental health crisis, which I call the second act of the pandemic. Then it's really going to be about human to human effort, not just expertise, not just programs. I mean, case in point, over 90% of large companies now have these EAP programs or employee assistance programs, but only about 3 to 7% of those employees actually take advantage of it. So that's why these human person-to-person kind of conversations are so important. I want to just share some of the additional comments that we've had come in, and keep these coming, everyone. Any questions, any comments, please bring them in. So Julie added, more importantly, leaders love having the tools to do what they know is right. Absolutely. So not only do you have to show them why it matters, but you have to give them the tools, which is to do, speak, and create. Carissa writes, hi, Laura, Dale, and AJ. And Gabriel says, that's an amazing quote, Laura Putnam. Thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit about that do, speak, create really quickly. Crockett, I know that's something you like to talk about a lot.
Well, it's something that's simple because it's rule of threes, but it's the ability to go take that do, speak, create, and say, how do you act on that? And how do you synthesize that? And how do you take and embrace it and live it? And so, it's easy to remember as opposed to saying, you get excited about this class that we're providing today. And you go, well, then how do I take that and go back to my day-to-day life? As opposed to saying, I can remember do, speak, and create. And I can go have that be very simple in my life. I could take little steps and I could go do something. I could speak about it. I could create to go help myself and help others. That was a point that I learned from your workshop, do, speak, create, but also, we may be leaning into managers to say, okay, well, in my building, it's not as healthy as maybe the other school is, but you can be a manager of your own attitude and you can be a leader. And so if you are willing to step out there and do things like that, my experience has been people will follow you. So you can take the do, speak, and create and just give that to your own culture, and you can be that agent of change yourself.
So yeah, managers are uniquely positioned, and so they need to be doing it themselves, modeling it, talking about well-being, and then creating some team-based systems. But each of us can be an agent of change, no matter where we are positioned within the organization. I couldn't agree more. All right, so Crockett, tell us a little bit in a minute or less. What were some of the challenges that we faced in this manager-driven movement of well-being that was offered both internally at Healthstat, but was also brought to your clients?
Well, as I said earlier, change isn't easy. And so some people are just resistant to change. It's in our DNA, I think. And so they have to figure out what's in it for them. And so they may be incremental in a project to say, I've got to get this work out the door. My client wants this or my boss wants this. So there was some maybe friction there. But I think over time, then there was more adoption because there's early adopters, mid adopters, late adopters. And so some of the late adopters that may say, I just don't believe in all that. Then they saw that other people were having success and they want to be part of that team.
Yeah, and we know that kind of internally there was a little bit of jockeying for kind of influence, if you will. So walk us through that a little bit.
Sometimes I think, Laura, my experience has been, it's not just that I was saying that early adopters, mid adopters, late adopters, as far as like willingness to adopt the culture, it's also can be budgetary. To somebody says, I don't have the budget to do this. A budget could be time, a budget could be money. And so they're saying, I just don't have the resources to go support this. And so that's some of the friction I think that I found when I saw what worked for Healthstat as a culture to lead by example. When we took this on the road and said, this is really powerful. You and I both experienced it. The workshop had incredible impact for employers, but not all employers. I remember at Cobb County, they said, well, I didn't know what this was. And so when they sent an email to everybody, well, you don't really have to go. They thought, well, I don't have to go. Then maybe I'm just going to be, maybe they should have us all doing jumping jacks. Who the heck knows what this is? So, but when they saw it, they said, oh my gosh, I get it now. So,
and Crockett, really quickly, I mean, I think a lesson learned from that was don't call it a wellness program, call it a leadership development program. The moment you call it a wellness program, people run away. They think they're just going to do jumping jacks and nothing important is going to happen. Really quickly, I just want to add in here, Julie adds one more thing, having executive leaders support from heads of companies just like you, Crockett, is the X factor in making these types of programs successful. I couldn't agree more. All right, Crockett. So in just a moment, we're going to be giving away 5 books. So and this will go to the first 5 people who write into the chat right here that they would like one. And I think, AJ, you're going to put the link. There's the book in the chat here where people can go to get that. So again, the first 5 who go onto that link to get that. So Crockett, what would you say are the top 3 lessons learned for you in this manager-driven movement of well-being that we launched at Healthstat and brought to your clients as well?
I would say I'm playing off what Julie offered, that you need to have commitment from the top, and you don't have to, but that really becomes the X factor. I think that you have to be flexible. We said that it started in one department, and so you can't expect that everybody just does everything. And so I also would say that you need to be hyper curious about the human condition, because people learn in different ways, and then they could start. And then if you allow them to have access to you, Laura, myself, or your senior leadership, then I think because they're going to run in a foul, and then they need to know, how do I access to get back on track?
So top 3 lessons learned: commitment. That was a big one. Especially like in the case of Cobb County, you got to have commitment from that county manager. Flexibility, as you talked about, and then never underestimating those deepest human needs that you alluded to, referencing the self-determination theory. So we all have a need for competency, autonomy, relatedness, being in connection with one another, purpose, and play. So we got lots of people here saying that they would love a book. Lisa is one of them. Also, Anne-Marie, Peter, thank you so much. Stephanie saying she would like one as well. But Anne-Marie and Peter sharing that they already have one. Thank you so much. Thanks for your nice words about that. And then Julie also has several that she would love to give away to leaders as well. Thank you so much, Julie. So Crockett, tell us what's the best way to be able to stay in touch with you.
I would say you could reach me through LinkedIn. You could reach me through email, which is crockett.dale@eversidehealth.com. And you could reach me through Laura, because we are best friends at work and support each other. So that's the 3 good ways to find me.
And one quick point, this will be recorded, as all the LinkedIn Lives are recorded, so you can watch it again if you'd like, or you can pass it along to your friends and your colleagues. I want to say thank you so much to all of the wonderful comments and wonderful participation here today. Thank you all so much. That's what brings the magic to these LinkedIn Live discussions. Next month, the topic is wellness privilege. So stay tuned for our next guest on that. That'll be coming up. And then, Crockett, you and I have a big project that we are about to launch. This is an online course on this conundrum of engagement. If you build it, they will not necessarily come. So how do you tackle that engagement conundrum? You're going to be our star guest speaker for that online course. So stay tuned for that. And again, Crockett, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being my best friend at work. Thank you for all the great work that you do. Thank you to everyone who was here today. Thank you to AJ and to Alana who are managing all of this. I love all of you, and I will look forward to seeing you in a month. Same fourth Wednesday of the month, same time. See you then. Thanks so much.